They made my life a nightmare in school. I tried to stay strong, but eventually, I cracked. I never thought high school would be like this. I imagined it would be like how they show it in movies, awkward, but manageable. The tough tests, the crushes, maybe some drama. But that would be it. I never thought I'd find myself hiding in the bathroom between classes, trying to avoid the whispers and stares that followed me every day. My name is Anna, and I'm a sophomore at Hilltop High. I'm not popular, far from it. I'm the quiet girl who tries to blend into the background. I have a few friends, but none of them are close enough to notice when I'm hurting. I've never been the center of attention, and that was fine with me. I never wanted to be noticed, but it turns out, when you try to be invisible, it makes it a lot easier for people to treat you like you're not even there. It started small. At first, I didn't even notice it. Just some girls whispering behind me in the hallway, the quick laughs when I walked by. But then, I started noticing the little things. The way people would talk about me like I wasn't standing right there, the way they'd make faces when I entered the room. They weren't being overtly mean, at least not at first. It was more like a jokey, a harmless joke at my expense, or so I thought. I didn't think it was bullying at first. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just normal high school behavior. Everyone gets teased, right? At least, that's what I kept telling myself. I tried to brush it off. I kept my head down, did my work, avoided getting in anyone's way. But no matter how hard I tried to stay out of the spotlight, it always seemed like someone would bring me back into itemly to make me the punchline of whatever joke they were telling. The first real incident that made me realize something was wrong happened during lunch one day. I was sitting by myself in the cafeteria, just like always. I didn't mind. I was used to it. I didn't know anyone well enough to sit with them. And honestly, I preferred the peace and quiet of being alone. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone anyway. But then I saw Olivia, one of the most popular girls in school, walk past my table with a few of her friends. I'd known of her since freshman year. She was the perfect girl-thing kind of person everyone adored. Beautiful, smart, charming, and always the center of attention. I never thought she would even notice someone like me. But that day, as she walked by, she stopped in front of my table. "Hey, Anna," she said, in that voice she always used when she was trying to be sweet, but knew it wasn't genuine. She leaned over, as if she was going to whisper something to me, and then, "You should probably leave before you make everyone else uncomfortable." I froze. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say, but I couldn't say anything at all. I just stared at her, too shocked to speak. The table next to me burst out laughing, and Olivia walked off with her friends, giving me a look that made my stomach twist. I didn't know what to do. The laughter echoed in my head for the rest of the day. The next day, when I went to class, I found something waiting for me in my desk, a crumpled piece of paper. I unfolded it slowly, already knowing what was coming. Written in messy handwriting were the words, "The only reason you sit alone is because nobody wants to be seen with you. You're a loser." I couldn't believe it. The first note I had received was bad enough, but this was different. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't harmless teasing. They were targeting me. And it wasn't just Olivia. As I looked around the classroom, I noticed other students staring at me, whispering to each other. The whispers were getting louder. They were talking about me. It wasn't just one person now. It was everyone. Every time I walked into a room, I could feel their eyes on me. I couldn't escape it. The bullying didn't just happen at school. It followed me home. Social media had always been a way for me to keep in touch with my friends and family, but it had become a nightmare. One day I opened my Instagram to see a picture of me that someone had taken while I wasn't paying attention. It was blurry, but it was me sitting alone at lunch, looking miserable. Under the photo, someone had written, "Even the losers need a break sometimes." The comments that followed were worse. "Look at this freak," one person wrote. "Who even lets her out in public?" Another one, "She should just stay in the bathroom where she belongs." I stared at my phone for a long time. It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't even know if I could anymore. It was too much. But it wasn't just social media. It was the hallways, the classrooms, the lunchroom. It was everywhere. Every time I passed Olivia and her friends in the hallway, I could hear them giggling and whispering. I tried to ignore it to keep walking, but it was impossible. They made it so that I couldn't escape. It was like I was trapped in a maze, and every corner I turned, there they waiting for me. The worst part was, nobody seemed to care. Not the teachers, not the staff, not even my friends. When I tried to talk to someone about it, they would shrug it off or tell me that it was just high school. It gets better, they'd say. People grow up, but that didn't make it stop. It only made me feel more alone. I felt like I was losing myself in a sea of cruelty and indifference. I thought about telling my parents, but I knew they wouldn't understand. They were busy with their own problems, and I didn't want to burden them with mine. I didn't want them to think I was weak, so I kept quiet, just like I always had. But inside, I was breaking. I wish I could say it got better, but it didn't. Every day felt like a struggle to get out of bed, to face the world that had become so cruel. But the hardest part was, I didn't know how to make it stop. I didn't know how to fight back. Every day felt like a battlefield. I woke up in the morning with a pit in my stomach, already anticipating the cruel jokes and the stares that awaited me. I used to love school when I was younger. The thought of seeing my friends, learning new things, and just being a normal teenager made me excited. But now, school felt like a prison. Every hallway, every class, every lunchtime became a reminder of how different I was, so invisible I had become to everyone except the people who wanted to tear me down. I still tried to act normal. I put on a brave face every morning and forced myself out the door. The moment I walked into school, I was overwhelmed with a feeling of dread. The hallway seemed to close in around me as I walked, my head down, my arms hugging my books close to my chest. I didn't want to draw attention to myself, but somehow I did anyway. It was like there was a target on my back, and no matter how much I tried to hide, everyone knew where to find me. The whispers followed me everywhere. "You see what Anna's wearing today?" I overheard a girl say as I passed her locker. She must have gotten it from a thrift store. What a loser. I tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. It was like the words were seared into my brain. Every time they spoke, I could feel the sting of their cruelty. And what made it worse was that nobody ever stepped in. Nobody defended me. The teachers didn't even seem to notice, and my classmates just let it happen. I had one friend, Maya. She wasn't in any of my classes, but we used to hang out after school sometimes. Maya was always quiet, but she was kind-hearted, and I liked being around her. She knew what was going on, and she tried her best to be supportive, but even she couldn't stop the bullying. She couldn't protect me from the things they said or the way they made me feel. One afternoon, I was sitting at my usual spot in the cafeteria, trying to eat my lunch in peace. Maya wasn't there that day, and I had to face the lunch period alone. It wasn't anything new, but today felt different. Today I felt like the whole world was watching me. And then, it happened again. Olivia walked in with her usual group of friends. I saw them from across the room, and I immediately felt my stomach tighten. They spotted me too. I knew they would. They always did. I looked down at my tray, trying not to draw attention to myself. But I wasn't quick enough. Olivia and her friends made their way toward me. "Hey, Anna," Olivia said, her voice laced with sarcasm. "Is this seat taken?" Before I could even respond, she shoved her tray onto the table in front of me and sat down, followed by her friends. Well, Olivia continued, leaning toward me, her face twisted in a mockingly sweet smile. "I didn't think you'd actually show up to lunch. Are you trying to be a part of the group now?" She giggled, and her friends joined in. My heart raced. I wanted to disappear, to run away, but I couldn't. I was stuck in that moment, trapped in the spotlight that I never wanted. "Why don't you tell us about your day, Anna?" Olivia continued. "Was it as lonely as yesterday? I mean, look at you. You have nobody. Nobody wants to sit with you. It's so sad, don't you think?" I stayed silent. The words they said were like daggers in my chest, but I didn't want to show them that it hurt. I didn't want them to get the satisfaction of knowing they were winning. "So, what's it like, Anna, being a complete nobody? Is it fun?" Olivia asked, and the rest of her group laughed. I couldn't take it anymore. The floodgates inside me opened. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I wasn't going to cry in front of them. No, I wasn't going to give them that. Instead, I stood up quickly, grabbing my tray with trembling hands, and rushed out of the cafeteria. I ran to the nearest bathroom and locked myself in one of the stalls, my breathing shallow and erratic. The tears came then. I couldn't stop them. The emotions that I had been bottling up for so long came rushing out like a dam had broken. I sat there for what felt like hours, my head resting against my knees, trying to calm down, but nothing worked. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout at the world for making me feel this way. I wanted someone, anyone, to tell me that it wasn't my fault. But nobody did. Nobody ever did. That night, I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, the words from that afternoon echoing in my mind. I had tried so hard to stay strong. I had tried to push through the pain, but it was too much. I couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted, mentally and physically. I didn't want to go back to school the next day, but I knew I had to. I had no choice. The next morning, I didn't want to leave my bed. I wanted to hide away from the world, but I knew if I didn't go, if I didn't at least try to pretend everything was normal, I would never escape. So I dragged myself out of bed, put on the same outfit I'd been wearing for days, and walked out the door. When I got to school, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. Every step I took felt like it was dragging me deeper into the ground. But I kept walking. The day was just as bad as I had imagined. The whispers, the stares, the cruel comments, it was all there, as usual. But this time, something inside me had changed. The tears were still there, just under the surface. But now there was a spark of something else, something that had been buried deep inside me for so long. I was done being their victim. Every morning felt like a battle. I'd wake up, roll over, and stare at the ceiling for a few minutes, feeling the weight of another day pressing down on me. It wasn't that I hated school itself, it was everything that came with it. The whispers, the mocking laughter, the stares. Every day was like walking into a war zone, and I was the target. The worst part, I didn't even know why they picked me. The bullying had started in 7th grade, so slowly I almost didn't notice at first. A joke here, a snide comment there. But by 8th grade it had escalated. Olivia and her group of friends were the main ones who made my life miserable. They would target me for the smallest things that didn't matter to anyone else. My clothes were too old-fashioned. My hair was weird because it wasn't perfectly styled. I wasn't like the other girls who had the perfect Instagram feeds, the perfect friendships, the perfect lives. I didn't care about any of that, but they did, and they made sure I knew it. I tried to stay out of their way. I kept to myself. The less attention I drew, the better, or so I thought. But the more I tried to shrink into the background, the more they seemed to notice me. It was like I was a magnet for their cruelty, and the more I tried to be invisible, the harder it was to escape. I woke up this morning just like every other day, dreading school, wishing I could just skip it and hide away. But I couldn't do that. I had to face it. I had to get through the day. So, I dragged myself out of bed, threw on some random clothes, and did my best to make myself presentable. I didn't have the luxury of feeling good about myself anymore. That had been taken away a long time ago. The walk to school felt like it took forever. Every step seemed heavier than the last. My body weighed down by the anxiety that crept up on me. By the time I reached the school gates, I was already mentally bracing myself for the onslaught. The hallway was crowded as usual, but all I could see were faces that turned away from me, avoiding eye contact like I was contagious. The first bell rang, signaling the start of the school day, and I shuffled into my first class, trying to blend in. My seat was always in the back, tucked away in the corner. I preferred it that way. It was the only place I felt like I could breathe. The rest of the day was a blur of whispers and stares, punctuated by Olivia and her friends making snide remarks whenever I crossed their path. It wasn't anything new, but it still hurt. No matter how many times I told myself it didn't matter, that they weren't worth my attention, the words stuck with me. At lunch, I sat alone as usual. I hated it. I hated how I had no one to talk to. How the cafeteria seemed like a place where everyone had their own group, and I was the odd one out. Maya, my only real friend, was absent today. She was always there for me, but she had her own life, her own friends. I couldn't always rely on her to be my shield. I was halfway through my sandwich when I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I didn't have to look up to know who it was. Olivia's laugh echoed through the room, a sound that made me cringe every time I heard it. I couldn't ignore them anymore. They were here, and they were going to make sure I felt their presence. "Hey, Anna," Olivia called out, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You actually show up for lunch today? How cute." I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my cool. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me upset, but I couldn't help it. My heart was racing, and my stomach was in knots. Olivia and her friends slid into the seats across from me, their eyes sizing me up like I was some kind of specimen. "So what's it like, Anna?" Olivia continued, leaning forward, her gaze icy. "Sitting here by yourself every day. Are you used to it?" "You must be, since you have no friends." I stared down at my tray, pretending not to hear her. I was trying so hard not to cry, but I could feel the tears threatening to spill. Why was this happening? What had I done to deserve this? Her voice cut through my thoughts again. "Honestly, I don't know why you even try. You'll never fit in. You're just different. Nobody wants to be around someone like you." I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the anger bubbling up, but I held it in. I had learned a long time ago that if I showed them how much their words hurt, it would only get worse. Olivia wasn't finished. She never was. "Maybe if you dress differently or, I don't know, actually tried to look like you belong, someone might notice you. But this," she gestured vaguely at my clothes, my hair, everything about me, "it's just sad." Her friend snickered. I wanted to scream at them, tell them that they didn't know anything about me, that they had no right to judge me. But instead, I took a deep breath, grabbed my tray, and stood up. I couldn't stay here any longer. I walked out of the cafeteria, my legs trembling, but I didn't stop. I didn't know where I was going, but I just needed to get away from them. The hallways blurred together as I rushed to the nearest bathroom. The moment I locked myself in a stall, I let out a shaky breath and sank down to the floor. Tears rolled down my face, and I couldn't stop them. I didn't want to cry, but I couldn't help it. The hurt, the rejection, it had built up over time, and now it was spilling out all at once. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually the bell rang. I had to pull myself together. I couldn't stay in this bathroom forever. When I walked back to class, my eyes were red, my head was down. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. But deep down, I knew that they already had. That afternoon, I went home feeling defeated. The bullying never seemed to end. It was an endless cycle, and I was trapped in it. I didn't know how much longer I could take it, but I had no choice. I had to keep going, even if it felt like it was tearing me apart inside. But something inside me shifted that night. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't keep hiding. I had to find a way to stand up for myself. The next morning, I woke up feeling the same heaviness in my chest. It was hard to breathe, hard to think of anything else. But something inside me had shifted. The constant torment, the daily dread, couldn't let it define me anymore. I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it, but I knew I couldn't keep running away from it. I couldn't let Olivia and her friends break me, no matter how hard they tried. As I got ready for school, I forced myself to look in the mirror and tell myself that I was strong, even if I didn't always feel like it. I wasn't going to let them see how much they were hurting me. The next day at school had to be different. I couldn't let the fear control me any longer. When I arrived at school, I kept my head high. I wasn't going to shrink into the background. I walked with purpose, ignoring the whispers and the stares. I knew they were still there, still judging me. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't care. It wasn't easy, but I made myself walk through the halls like I belonged. That day in class, Olivia and her friends didn't waste any time. As soon as I sat down, Olivia was already making her usual comments. "Did you actually put some effort into your look today, Anna?" She sneered from the other side of the room. "I guess it's a miracle, but it's still not enough to make you fit in." I ignored her, focusing on my work, pretending not to hear her. It was hard and my heart was racing, but I refused to let her words get to me. She could say whatever she wanted, but it wouldn't make me feel small anymore. Later that day, during lunch, they didn't give up. Olivia and her group surrounded my table once again. This time, I didn't stand up and run. I stayed seated, even though my hands were clenched into fists under the table. Olivia leaned over, a cruel smile on her face. "What's it like, Anna? You really think anyone cares about your presence here? You're such a loser." Ugh. But this time, I didn't flinch. I looked her straight in the eyes, my voice steady as I responded. "Maybe you're the one who needs to look in the mirror, Olivia. Maybe you're the one who needs to realize that being cruel doesn't make you better than anyone else." There was a brief silence at the table. I saw the shock flicker across Olivia's face, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a small spark of pride inside me. I wasn't backing down anymore. Olivia, never one to be silenced for long, scoffed. "Oh, look at you, trying to act tough. But you're still the same pathetic girl who nobody cares about." The words stung, but I stood my ground. "Maybe I don't care if you care about me, Olivia. Maybe I don't need your approval to know I'm worth something." For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped. Olivia didn't know how to respond. Her friends were staring at me, and I could feel the tension in the air. I wasn't sure what had come over me, but something inside me told me it was time to stop letting them control my life. I stood up, leaving the table without a second thought. Olivia's voice followed me, but I didn't turn back. I couldn't let her words chase me anymore. The rest of the day felt different. I walked with my head a little higher, my chest a little more open. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was hiding. I didn't feel like I was shrinking under the weight of their judgment. When I got home that afternoon, I went straight to my room and closed the door. I stared at myself in the mirror again. This time, I didn't see the girl who was picked on and belittled. I saw someone stronger, someone who had finally found the courage to speak up. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. The bullying wouldn't stop overnight. Olivia and her friends weren't going to just give up, but I had taken the first step, and that step felt like freedom. The next few days at school were a mix of relief and tension. The relief came from the fact that I had finally spoken up to Olivia and her friends. I didn't let their words break me, and that was something I was proud of. The tension, however, was inevitable. It wasn't like Olivia was just going to roll over and leave me alone. If anything, I expected the bullying to get worse, and it did. The first sign came during my history class the next day. I walked into the room, and as soon as I sat down, I felt the eyes on me. Olivia and her friends were whispering in the back of the room, and I knew they were talking about me. It wasn't just the usual snide comments anymore. It was something more calculated, more malicious. During the lesson, I heard a rustling behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw one of Olivia's friends, Kate, holding something up in the air, a piece of paper. It had my name written on it in big, bold letters, and underneath it, there was a crude drawing of Memi's face distorted, with exaggerated features. It was a mockery of the way I looked, a caricature. The paper was passed around, and I could hear the muffled laughter echoing through the room. It felt like a punch in the gut. My heart started pounding in my chest, and for a second I thought I might pass out. I wanted to shrink back into my seat, to disappear like I used to. But I forced myself to stay in place. I didn't want to show them how much it hurt. The teacher, Mr. Turner, didn't notice what was going on. He was too busy talking about the next assignment. No one spoke up. No one said anything. The room continued to buzz with quiet laughter, and I could feel the heat in my cheeks. I was humiliated, but I didn't let it show. After class, I headed straight for the bathroom, trying to keep my composure. I walked past the group of girls who had been laughing earlier. I didn't make eye contact. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I would break. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and let out a shaky breath. I was crying, but I tried to keep it quiet. My body felt like it was falling apart, but there was no way I was going to let anyone see how much I was struggling. That's when I heard a voice from outside the stall. "Anna?" It was Emma, the girl I had known since middle school. She wasn't part of the popular group, but she wasn't exactly an outcast either. She was just there. Someone who had always been kind to me. I sniffled, trying to compose myself. "I'm fine, Emma. I just need a minute." Emma's voice was soft, but I could hear the concern in it. "I saw what happened in class. I just want you to know that they're all idiots. You don't deserve any of this." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to tell me that. "I don't know how to make it stop," I whispered, feeling the weight of everything I'd been going through. Every day it gets worse. I don't know how much more I can take. There was a pause before Emma spoke again. It's not your fault, Anna. You didn't do anything to deserve this. But if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. You don't have to go through this alone. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Emma didn't just see me as a victim. She saw me as a person. That was something I hadn't felt in a long time. Thanks, Emma, I said, wiping my eyes. That means a lot. Anytime, she replied. Seriously, don't let them win. You're better than them. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I fully believed it yet. But her words gave me something to hold on to, even if just for a moment. I left the bathroom with a little more confidence than I had when I entered. The rest of the day went by in a blur. I kept my head down, trying to avoid the confrontations that I knew would come. Olivia's mocking comments were still there, but they didn't sting as much. It was like I had a shield around me now, a shield made of Emma's support and my own determination not to let them see me fall apart. The next day, Olivia's cruelty reached new heights. During lunch, I sat alone, trying to eat in peace when I saw Olivia and her group walking toward me. She didn't waste any time. Look, guys, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. It's the school's biggest loser. I didn't know you were allowed to sit at the cool table, Anna. Shouldn't you be sitting in the back corner with the rest of the freaks? I felt a familiar ache in my chest. But this time, I didn't let it consume me. I looked at Olivia, my voice steady, though my heart was still racing. You know, I began, my tone calm. I might be a freak in your eyes, but at least I'm not a bully. So, you can keep trying to bring me down, but it's not going to work anymore. Olivia's face faltered for a second. For the first time, she didn't have a witty comeback. But then she laughed, like she always did, trying to regain control of the situation. Whatever, loser, she muttered before walking away with her friends. The laughter that followed didn't sting as much as it used to. It wasn't over. It wasn't easy, but I had found something that they couldn't take away from me, my voice, my ability to fight back, no matter how hard it seemed. And as I sat there, finally able to finish my lunch without looking over my shoulder, I realized that I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. The days following that lunch were a mix of uneasy silence and cautious optimism. Olivia and her friends didn't come after me as aggressively, but I could tell that they were waiting for me to break. And part of me still worried that I might. They had tormented me for so long that I wasn't sure how long I could keep pretending it didn't hurt. But something had shifted in me. I wasn't the same person I had been just a week ago. I had stood up to Olivia, and while the confrontation hadn't ended in some magical resolution, it felt like a small victory. I wasn't going to let her let them control me anymore, but that didn't mean I didn't have bad days. I still had moments where I felt isolated, where the sting of their words hit harder than I'd like to admit. Every now and then, I'd hear one of their little whispers or catch a cruel look from one of Olivia's followers, and my stomach would drop. But this time, I wouldn't let it defeat me. I would rise above. The hardest part, though, was still my parents. I hadn't told them about the bullying. In fact, I hadn't told anyone except Emma. I couldn't bring myself to say the words out loud, even to the people who loved me the most. I didn't want them to worry. But more than that, I didn't want them to see me as weak. But that night, as I sat in my room staring at the ceiling, I realized that I couldn't carry this alone anymore. I needed to tell someone else. Someone who could help. I had tried to handle it all on my own, but maybe that wasn't the right way. Maybe asking for help didn't make me weak, it made me strong. The next evening, after dinner, I sat down at the kitchen table with my mom. She was washing dishes, and I was trying to come up with the right words. I wanted to tell her about the bullying, but how do you even begin that conversation? Mom, I said softly, trying to gather the courage. There's something I need to talk to you about. She turned around, concern in her eyes. What's wrong, honey? You seem upset. I took a deep breath. It's about school. I'm being bullied by a group of girls. Her face changed instantly. It was a mix of shock and concern. Her hands frozen in midair as she processed my words. What? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't know how to explain why I hadn't told her before. It wasn't that I didn't trust her, but the thought of her worrying or getting upset made me hesitate. I don't know, I whispered, looking down. I just didn't want to make it a bigger deal, and I didn't want you to think I couldn't handle it. Mom came over and sat beside me, her hand gently rubbing my back. Anna, you don't have to handle everything on your own, and you definitely don't have to deal with this kind of thing by yourself. You should come to me sooner. I'm so sorry you've been going through this. I felt a weight lift off my chest as she spoke. For the first time in a while, I felt like I wasn't alone. She didn't judge me or make me feel weak. She just listened, and that was all I really needed. After a long conversation, my mom promised she would talk to the school. She said we'd figure out a way to stop the bullying, and that I didn't deserve to be treated like that. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I wouldn't have to face this battle alone. The next day, my mom made good on her promise. She called the school and spoke to the principal, explaining the situation and asking for a meeting with the teachers. I didn't know exactly what was said in that meeting, but when I went to school the next morning, things felt different. Olivia wasn't as bold. She didn't approach me during lunch, and there was a certain tension in the air that wasn't there before. It was like the school had finally started to take notice. I didn't know if it was the principal's involvement, or if Olivia had just been warned. But whatever it was, I felt like I had gained some ground. For the next few weeks, the bullying slowed down. Olivia and her friends would still make occasional snide comments, but they were more subtle. It wasn't the same intense harassment it had been. I could breathe a little easier, and with each passing day, I felt a little bit stronger. It wasn't over. The scars were still there, and there were moments when I doubted myself, but I knew that I could handle whatever came next. I had my mom's support, Emma's friendship, and most importantly, I had my own voice. I wasn't going to let them break me. The weeks that followed were not perfect, but they were better. There was still an occasional whisper in the halls, a passing comment meant to sting, but I learned to ignore it. Olivia and her friends didn't have the same power over me that they once did. I still didn't feel like I belonged, but I felt stronger, more resilient. But healing was a slow process. I began to notice it wasn't just about what others said to me. It was also about how I had started to feel about myself. The damage that had been done by the bullying wasn't something that could be erased overnight. I had to rebuild the parts of me that felt weak, the parts of me that had been shaken by every insult, every laugh, every sneer. The first real moment of healing came during a class project. Emma and I had been paired up for a history project, and we decided to meet after school to work on it. I was nervous, not about the project itself, but about being alone with someone else. For months, I had kept to myself, isolating myself from anyone who might judge or hurt me. But Emma was different. She had always been there for me, always had my back. It was time I allowed myself to be open with her again, to trust that not everyone would hurt me. As we worked on the project, we talked about everything and nothing at the same time. At one point, Emma paused, looking at me with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You've been really quiet lately." I thought for a moment. It wasn't easy to admit, but I knew she deserved to know how I was really feeling. "I think I'm getting there," I said softly. "It's been really hard, but I'm starting to feel like maybe things can be different. I'm just scared, that it'll happen again." Emma smiled, her expression gentle. "You're stronger than you think, Anna. You always have been, and you've got me. I'm not going anywhere." I felt a warmth spread through me at her words. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that, how much I needed to be reminded that I wasn't alone in this. The rest of the school year went by in a blur of small victories. The bullying didn't stop entirely, but I learned how to stand my ground. I had learned to defend myself in ways I never thought I could. Every day was a challenge, but it also became a new chance to prove to myself that I could do this. I could live through this and come out stronger on the other side. But the real turning point came in the last few weeks of school. Olivia and her friends, while still occasionally making snide remarks, had started to back off. They no longer saw me as the easy target. I had built walls, and though they still tried to climb over them at times, they couldn't get past the strength I had found in myself. One afternoon, as the school year was nearing its end, Olivia approached me in the hallway. My heart sank for a moment. Was she going to start it all over again? But this time, when she spoke, her tone was different. It wasn't mocking, or cruel. It was almost resigned. "Anna," she said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. I don't know why I did the things I did. It was wrong. I'm sorry." I was speechless for a moment. I had prepared myself for this moment 100 times, but never in my wildest dreams had I imagined Olivia would apologize. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice small. "Why now?" Olivia shifted uncomfortably. "I guess I realized I was just hurting too. I didn't know what to do with it, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. You didn't deserve that." It was hard to know how to react. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell her how much she had hurt me, how much damage she had done. But another part of me just wanted to move on. The apology didn't erase the pain, but it was a step in the right direction. "Thank you," I said quietly. "But I'm not sure we'll ever be friends. Not after everything." She nodded, as if she understood. "I get that. I wanted you to know." And with that, she walked away. There was no big confrontation, no dramatic ending to our story, but there was closure. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe. With that, the school year came to an end. I spent the summer focusing on myself. I worked on my confidence, spent time with Emma, and healed in ways I hadn't thought were possible. I had learned that I didn't need to be defined by the cruelty of others. I wasn't perfect, and there would still be hard days ahead, but I knew I could handle them. The bullying had left scars, but they didn't define me. I had learned to stand up for myself, to ask for help when I needed it, and most importantly, to never let anyone steal my sense of self-worth again. As the new school year began, I walked into those hallways with my head held high. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't the same person I had been, and no matter what came next, I would face it with strength. If you like this video, please subscribe for more.